And the Oscar goes to... There we go. This is... Godzilla.
All right. I want to take a second and do like one of these little reaction videos. I know nobody cares about what I think about the industry. It's interesting, after 20 years of working in visual effects and working on some Oscar nominated and Oscar winning visual effects movies, the question is did the Oscar get it right this year? So this year we had several great nominations. The Creator, Godzilla -1, and then we had some funny ones. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, you know, the standard Marvel fare. And then we had Mission Impossible and Napoleon, both of which were touting that they didn't use visual effects, then get nominated for the award for Best Visual Effects, which is hilariously comical. So the question is, did the Oscar get it right? So the winner of the 2024 Visual Effects Oscar went to Godzilla -1. What do we think about that? Well, I, for one, think it's fantastic. When you look at Godzilla -1, it's such a different film in comparison to what it was up against. A team of like 35 artists versus the hundreds or thousands of artists that work on these big tentpole films. The budgets of the entire movie match the budgets of the visual effects for these other entries into this category, and yet they came out and they won. So what is the thing that made it so different? What is it that made it able to punch up so high? Because the reality is, when you look at the visual effects of Godzilla -1, they're good. They're really good. But there are some things that are imperfect, just as in any movie. There's always going to be some shots that don't work out as well, or there's late changes, and so you're trying to get those done. The difference between Godzilla -1 and the rest of the industry is going to flip everything on its head. So the biggest deal is, one, they did it with so much less money. They did it in 8 months. The difference is the director was the visual effects supervisor. And I believe I've read this, and I can't remember where, but I believe the director actually did the ZBrush sculpt of Godzilla, or at least participated in that. So here you have someone leading the charge on a film that's going to be highly driven by visual effects as a storytelling element. Someone who actually understands the craft, the limitations, and the abilities of that medium. I think that's one of the most critical takeaways from Godzilla -1 as to what made it so successful. When you're working in these big tentpole films, there's often so many layers of approvals that you have to go through. You have multiple levels of leads and supervisors within your own VFX company. There's usually a client-side VFX soup. Then you've got directors, producers, executives, all of whom get to weigh in and say what they think about how a shot looks, or what works or what doesn't. So that right there already extends out the time and the budget that's required to be able to make those films look good. Secondly, and this is the bigger problem, is what we've seen in the film industry is a change in how we make movies. 30 years ago, you had a team that would develop a film, they would write the script, and they would work on that script till that script was good and worked. And then you went into shooting. And there's reshoots in older films, just like there are today, but not to the level that they are today. We are constantly seeing that entire third acts are being reshot, right? It doesn't work, or there's a new agenda that they want to push, or there's a new toy that they want to sell. Whatever the thing is that drives these big kind of billion-dollar franchises, they start pushing. And so then you have all of this rush work that has to happen. That rush work is really expensive. All of that has caused the greater world to believe that visual effects is ruining movies. I would point at this film, Godzilla -1, to say, look how awesome this movie is. And it's awesome not because of its visual effects. It's a big story piece in that film, but it's awesome because it's a great story. It's awesome because it deals with the human experience. It's awesome because the visual effects are built with a plan. There was an understanding with how they wanted to use that. And I'm certain that in this, there was a lot less kind of pixel hunting on this said like, well, is that value on that pixel exactly right? There was a lot more of it works, it looks good, let's move on, right? And the very first movie I worked on was Night at the Museum, the very first one, and that was the last film I believe that we did at Rhythm and Hues with film outs. So I would do a shot, I would light a shot, and I would send that out for film outs. I had to get it in before 5 so it could get through the lab and be ready for the next day's dailies, film out dailies. And then to review that, there's no digital pixel snooper, there's no, A-Bing between other takes. The only thing you could do was rock and roll and slow it down to about a third speed and rock and roll it back and forth. And on occasion, the projectionist, the VFX supervisor would ask him to hold it, and you would melt through the celluloid, and you'd see that big melt out, and the film would break and roll through. Didn't happen very often, but on occasion. But the reality of that is you have to make decisions, and you can't just nitpick and get hung up on every little thing. I worked on numerous shots that in the cut were less than 24 frames. So they were less than 1 second of footage. Less than 1 second. And you better believe that you could get in there and just absolutely, pick that thing to death. But because of the way we reviewed, it went out. And guess what? Night Museum movies are fun. They're great. They tell a fun story. And the visual effects aren't perfect, but they're not distracting. Nobody pandered that film as saying this movie's terrible because its visual effects are ruining the story. The visual effects supported the story really well. What we're seeing nowadays is terrible stories that have a lot of visual spectacle, and so people are associating the level of visual spectacle and visual effects with bad movies. Not the case. You could see a film with terrible visual effects and have a great story, and you'd be highly entertained. I mean, I could go back and watch tons of movies from the 80s and 90s that have practical effects that don't hold up, that are terrible, but the film is still great. So usually the Oscars get this thing wrong, but I say this time they got it right. Now, my other favorite thing to do is I love to time the Oscars to see how long they get from when their award is presented and they give their speech. Visual effects, ever since 2012 when Life of Pi got the Jaws music, never gets as much time as other segments do. I'll time like, what do the producers get? What do the actors get? What does the director get? What does the screenwriter get? And all the above the line people, and then I start timing the below the line people to see who gets shortchanged. And visual effects and editing also I find usually are the two least amount of time given for them to give their acceptance speech, which I always find really odd. In fact, I want to go back and time this one. I don't know what it is, but I want to see. I believe that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito had more time in their lead up than the visual effects team had to give their response. So I understand it's a live show and you got to keep it moving, but it's pretty lame. So Academy, you finally got one right. I think that the creator would have been another interesting selection for this for various other reasons, and I can make another video talking about that. This is my first time doing one of these types of videos. I have no idea if anyone even cares what I think, and I don't think anyone should really care what I think. I don't think it matters. I just hope that you found some entertainment in it and maybe some thought-provoking as you think about visual effects. And most of my audience are people who are seeking to understand how to make visual effects better. Maybe this is helpful in your idea of what the industry looks like and how to do it better. So if you like this, hit the like button so I know that people want to see more of this and I can crank some of this stuff out. Thanks for watching.